Καλησπέρα σε όλους. Ονομάζομαι Panos Xydonas, είμαι καθηγητής χρηματοοικονομικής μηχανικής στην ESSCA Grand École στο Παρίσι. Θα είμαι chair στο session με τον τίτλο The ESG Imperative in Global Investing, The How, Who and What of Sustainable Investments. Θα ήθελα να καλέσω στο πάνελ την κυρία Λαζαράκου, πρόεδρο της Επιτροπής της Κεφαλαγοράς, την κυρία Andreea Moraru, EBRD Regional Head για Ελλάδα και Κύπρο, και την κυρία Ismini Papakirillou, CEO της Hellenic Development Bank. So, ladies and gentlemen, as we gather here today at the beautiful Athens Riviera summit, we find ourselves at a very critical juncture, where global investing should align with the urgent necessity for sustainability. So today we explore the ESG imperative for sustainability investing, and I would like to start with Ms. Vassiliki Lazarakou, the chair of the Hellenic Capital Market Commission. The first question is associated with the complexity of the regulatory framework with regard to the obligations of the companies about sustainability disclosure. So, why such a framework has been developed, and why corporate sustainability reporting is considered as, let's say, so vital?
Thank you, Mr. Xydonas. Let me just start by congratulating Ioanna Sabrakou and the whole team for this event, because I think they have done a very good job. And thank you for the invitation. I want to make 3 points, I'm thinking. The one is, and you mentioned it rightly, that it's a complex framework. So the first one is, why do we need this framework? So this will be the first point. The second one is, and how are you going to succeed in, let's say, making sure that we are all at the same, we all have the same understanding. So we need cooperation in this respect. We need international cooperation, actually. And my third point will be an example of why we need this, which is going to be especially with respect to greenwashing. So let me start with the first one. The first one, we all know that in Europe, at least, we had the Green Deal. So after the Green Deal and after, let's say, the understanding that we need to do something for the planet, especially for the environmental side, so there was, let's say, a willingness to make sure that we all proceed to taking action with respect to all these issues. In order to make sure that everybody understands and has the same targets and the same objectives, we wanted to make sure as regulators and as policymakers that there is regulation, which actually became complex at the end, but there is regulation which will give the guidelines in order to have for the investors understandable, consistent, and comparable information regarding all these sustainable investments and the sustainable activity in general. So that was the reason that gave birth, let's say, to regulation, because the companies, if they didn't have any such rules, then the companies would disclose whatever they wanted. So disclosure has to be made in accordance with rules. Transparency, it's a top priority for the markets in order to make sure that the investors have all the necessary information, which is accurate, fair, comparable, and in order to make sure that they can then take informed decisions. So that was the reason for and we saw then that we had the SFDR, which is the regulation for the disclosure of the asset managers, where they invest their money, and also we had the taxonomy regulation, which tries to explain and try to categorize the investment, let's say, the investments according to specific criteria. And also we have all the relevant framework regarding the sustainability, which is actually, as you mentioned, very complex, because we have level 1, then we have the level 2, which is getting really very big. Also, we have all these guidelines and the Q&As and all this, so it has become complex. However, on the other hand, it is necessary. And what is more necessary, and this is my second point, is international cooperation, because we have to make sure that all the information, there is standardization of information, and that we have global standards. We don't need also only to have Greek or European, we need to have global standards. And this is where it is very important for us as supervisors as well to make sure that we all have the same understanding of what is. Now, This is a challenge because we know that not all countries are at the same pace as far as, let's say, importance on sustainability is concerned. And for us, the regulators, it's even more challenging because we all speak that we need to have comparable information and we want to make sure that we have the same rules. However, this is not 100% possible because we are different jurisdictions. So supervision becomes even more relevant because then we want to make sure that we supervise the entities and we make sure that they're in compliance with the regulations. And this is where my third point is concerned regarding greenwashing. Because the last years we have seen a lot of discussion regarding greenwashing. And what is greenwashing let's say, in simple words? Greenwashing is to try to say, to mislead somebody that I am green, although I'm not green, I'm brown. So this kind of misleading the investors that you have, that we have done, that the company has done more than it has done in reality, then it's a problem of greenwashing. And greenwashing is something that all regulators all over the world, even though they don't have all the same framework, however, all regulators are right now trying to see how they are going to combat and mitigate. And we have made actually in ESMA, very recently, we issued a report explaining what is greenwashing, why we see it coming up, and what are the risks regarding greenwashing as far as investors are concerned, and how we can let's say, mitigate these risks. But I want to end, and I think I hope I was not too long. I want to end with one thing, because we speak about ESG, and for me ESG is just an acronym. But in reality, what is ESG is about, and I'm saying this all the time, ESG is about socially and environmentally responsible companies. Companies that have transparency in the way they are governed and that try to combat all these issues regarding regulatory and not only compliance, with regulatory and frameworks.
Thank you very much for this so elaborate answer. I would like to proceed with Ms. Moraru. Following Ms. Lazarakou discussion about the regulatory issues, I would like to ask you, what are the initiatives that EBRD has undertaken towards this direction? And also, at the same question, would you like to elaborate on us regarding the policy of the EBRD about climate finance and climate investing?
Sure. No, first of all, thank you very much for the invitation, and congratulations indeed to the organizer for putting together this great event in this beautiful occasion. It's a pleasure for me to be here. So yes, we are a climate bank, and we have put green financing and sustainability at the core of our strategy since inception in 1991. However, we accelerated our commitment in the last couple of years, and more recently we committed that 50% of our operation will be targeted green financing towards 2025, an objective that we have already achieved last year. So last year, in the EBRD countries of operation, we committed about 6.5 billion in green financing, and this helped mobilizing another 21 billion in green financing, which means that for every euro we deployed in our countries, we managed to attract 3 more euro for green financing. In Greece, we've been very active as well. It's actually one of the countries where we've done a lot of green financing, especially in the last 4 years. So we invested almost 2 billion in over 85 projects. And just a bit on the stats side, what does it mean? So this, according to our estimate, this project would help reducing emissions by 2,000 kilotons of carbon emissions, which is about 4% of the emissions of the country based on 2020 data, which is equivalent to removing 1.2 million cars on the road. So just to give a bit of perspective on how important these green projects are. So how do we support this agenda, which is very important? We have some tools. So first of all, on the investment side, because we are a bank and we invest, so we committed that all our projects are Paris aligned. That means that every project we look at, it has to have a very clear low carbon footpath. It has to minimize the so-called carbon lock-in risk. And also it has to have an aspect that help mitigate the climate risk, which is more and more challenging. We do due diligence on all our clients. We assess the sustainability component, and we come up with strategies. We identify the gaps, and we work with the companies on sustainability plans to reduce this gap as soon as possible. Just an example of this type of investments we've done recently with Fulgor, which is a manufacturer producing cable for submarine cables. These are very important for the renewable energy, for offshore wind. We supported them. We provided 88 million as part of the RRF to increase the production capacity that would help Greece produce more of these submarine cables for the offshore wind industry worldwide. Another tool we have is policy, and here we work with the governments, and we had a very successful cooperation with the government of Greece, for example. One example would be the offshore wind legislation that we support. Offshore wind is very important for Greece, considering the strategic location, and having an adequate legislation that would allow investments in this space is very important. And the third one is on the advisory. We work with government and with companies. We have a very successful advisory for small business program. This is basically working with very small companies that they have a turnover of a few millions, and they don't have the expertise, they don't have the international expertise on what ESG means. So we work with them, we provide consultants. This is a program that is financed by the Greek government, for which we are very grateful for giving us the support. And we work with these very small companies to come up with a sustainability plan to improve their ESG standards and make them more sustainable long term. We also had a very successful cooperation with the Growth Fund in Greece, where we developed a ESG strategy for their companies. So all their companies now, they have sustainability targets, they have KPIs to report. Also with TIPED, we have done a scoring on ESG, again, very, very successfully. And another important aspect, which is linked to what Vassiliki said on the capital markets, we've been very active here. We invested more than 2 billion in bonds, and more recently in green and sustainability-linked bonds. And this is a very important aspect, because there are different types of green bonds, and EBRD invests only in the IGMA recognized principal bonds, which are adhered to a very strict standards in terms of sustainability. And this is something that we bring, because we are a cornerstone investor. We take 20% of the issues, and we require very high standards when we invest in these issues, which is very important to keep the standards high on the market.
Okay, thank you very much. I would like to proceed with Ms. Papakirillou. I would like to ask you, Ms. Papakirillou, to tell us a few things about the sustainability agenda of the Hellenic Development Bank with regard to the SMEs, and what is the type of assistance that you provide to them?
Sure. First, I would also like to thank you for the invitation and for the chance to speak on such an important topic, especially for SMEs, as you mentioned. Hellenic Development Bank is the National Promotional Bank of Greece, so it's at the core of the development strategy. And as such, ESG and generally sustainability is extremely important to us. And that we do in a number of different ways. And perhaps the first way to kind of give an example is on our programs. And generally, our programs are really focused on the micro and SMEs, because these are the backbone of the Greek economy. So we really try to target the smaller companies. And from the clients that we've had so far, you can see that the overwhelming majority of our programs are used by companies that are either less than 10 employees or less than 2 million of revenue. So we're really talking here at the smaller companies in Greece. And it's very important to really emphasize this ESG importance. So to give some examples of the programs we have that really focus on sustainability, we have green co-financing loans. This is a program for 415 million that we are running with funds also provided by the European Investment Bank, which really target investment projects in the green transition. And that is quite important, because we need to give the incentives to Greek companies to really move towards the green transition. This is not just a Greek development goal, but an EU important. I mean, it's the Green Deal, so it's one of the most important things we currently have as goals. At the same time, even though it's not only green. We have a digital transformation co-financing facility, again in collaboration with the European Investment Bank. And that we think is also key, not just in terms of going through the digital transition, which is also important from a development perspective, but also for the green transition, because especially when you look at the smaller SMEs, only if they have the means and they transform digitally, as I think the previous panel was also discussing, you can also move to the green transition. So for us, this is very important, and we really try to emphasize it through a program that is specialized for this. Another example of a program where we try to provide the right incentives to SMEs in order to focus on the question of ESG and the topic of ESG is our Innovation Guarantee Fund. This is a fund that targets companies that innovate, and part of the criteria that you have a capital rebate as part of the program is that they have to fulfill ESG criteria, and they are set out at the beginning of the program, and then each company has to fulfill them in addition to some innovation criteria, and then they get 5% out of the 20% capital rebate confirmed. So this is very strong incentive for the companies really to innovate in this segment. So this is just a few examples. Another one that sometimes I think gets overlooked and it's important to mention is that we also have a facility for technical staff in collaboration with TMEDE in Greece, which is the fund for technical and engineering, technical personnel and engineers. We have a guarantee program that finances the needs of be it small engineering offices or technical companies. And this is key because human capital is key for the green transition and also for the implementation of ESG policies and for SMEs to really meet these targets. And having the technical personnel there is important, especially when we look not just at the urban centers, but also at the periphery of Greece, which for us the target is covering the whole country. And so for us having a program that really builds up on that human capital is very important, and it's something that we also see that it's really being utilized in a very efficient way.
Okay,
I'll stop here for now.
I think we can have a second round of questions. I would like to continue with you, and I would like to ask you about the incentives that HDB provides to companies towards sustainability.
Sure. So in the programs we just described, we have a number of different instruments where we provide incentive. For example, in co-finance loans, where by us providing a loan together with the banks, because our products are always being delivered through the banking sector, by having a portion which is not, it's interest-free, we really lower the interest costs, and especially at this environment of high interest costs, this is extremely important for SMEs. So I would say this is one of the most important characteristics that our programs have. In terms of the guarantees, we provide very high guarantees, so this also helps in terms of giving loans to SMEs that perhaps otherwise would be excluded out of the banking sector. So we really provide also an incentive to the banks to really expand the SMEs that they currently provide financing and ensure that there is new SMEs entering into the banking system. So I would say these are two. This gives me also an opportunity to also mention it's not just about incentives, but we also put some requirements that push towards ESG. So currently we have just launched a very big entrepreneurial fund, the TEPICT 3. And in this one, we've made the requirement that they have to fill an ESG questionnaire. So anyone who applies, even though this is a generalist fund in terms of the sectoral approach, they have to fill in an ESG questionnaire. And that's really important for us because we need to train them, especially the smaller. I think, as you also mentioned, we need to make sure that they understand that this is becoming a requirement. It's becoming also a part of the regulatory requirements to get credit going forward. So they need to get into this process. And we have included that in our process to kind of get them started.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, Ms. Moraru, following the answer of Ms. Papakirillou, I would like to ask you, EBRD claims to supporting financial institutions towards green transition. So could you please tell us a few things about the institutional toolbox that you are utilizing towards this direction?
Yes, so basically we have a variety of instruments that we deploy depending on the sector. So maybe I'll start with the financial institutions, which we see as a big catalyst for change, because banks They are providing the fuel to the economy, and they have access to all the companies. They work with a variety of companies. So what we are doing with the banks, we are trying to support them to come up with a sustainability food path, so far, our engagement was mainly linked to the use of proceeds. So when we are investing in a bond, for example, in a bailable bond, in umbrella bond, we are requiring that the multiplier of our investments in terms of use of proceeds was going to go towards green investment. Now we are basically moving from this to a more broader sustainability approach, where we work with the bank to incorporate sustainability in their credit policies like we do. So EBRD, when we assess a project, we assess against climate risk as well. So we are working with the banks across the region and also in Greece to try to basically broaden this approach and have a more holistic institutional approach when they assess the credit risk and they provide financing. So this is one of the instruments we use. And also in terms of bonds, I mentioned before, when we work with companies that they want to tackle the capital markets, we can provide technical assistance to help them develop sustainability-linked bonds or green bonds. We have access to advisory support, where the advisors work with them to make them more aware than they are. Also, in the industry, it's very important now, even more important with the new regulation in Europe in terms of carbon emissions, for companies to have sustainability-linked loans. So it's something that we can do. Greece, we've seen some issues of sustainability-linked bonds, but sustainability-linked loans are also equally important when companies they commit to a certain low carbon plan to reduce this and invest more in green investments.
And the final question for Ms. Lazarakou. What are the current advances at both the European and global level with regard to financial reporting, ESG financial reporting, and this direction?
I don't know where to start or where to end, because there are a lot of developments during the last, let's say, year. We have seen new directives. We have the new ESG rating directive, which requires for external assurance. We have seen also a lot of things going on as far as the IFRS is concerned. We have S1, S2, which are specific standards for sustainability reporting, corporate reporting, global, as well as the European standards for Europe. So you see that there is a lot of progress going on with respect to all this financing. And why? Because we heard already from Andreea and Ismini the importance that right now financing gives to the ESG and how this is fulfilled by the company. So what I was trying to do from the first moment, as far as the Hellenic Capital Market Commission is concerned, is to make sure that we explain to the companies, because they have this disclosure framework, that they need first to understand that they have to integrate their strategy so that they can comply with the ESG framework. So the first step is to have a strategy, and the second step is to make sure that they comply with the regulatory framework. So there are a lot of things going on with respect to disclosure, corporate disclosure. We have also the CSRD, which is actually right now in the phase of implementation into the Greek law. We have this. We have the standards, as I mentioned before, the sustainability standards, to have comparable information for all the corporates. And also we have right now all the efforts regarding the greenwashing and all these issues. Now, having said all this, let me say that, first of all, ESG is not only about environment, it's also about social. And there is not so much discussion about social internationally, not only in Greece, because we are just part of Europe and then of the world. So there is not so much discussion about this. So we're going to see that in the near future, the discussion about the social is going to get more and more into our plate. And so this is the next thing. And also another thing that it's going to be of interest is what will happen after the elections. Because we have seen a lot of discussions that after the European elections, maybe the agenda is going to change. And you may know better, Andreea, than me. And we have seen a lot of discussions also about the US elections. So that's another point that remains to be seen what will happen. In my view, this will maybe the emphasis is going to be more on transition, than maybe it was before, because it's not going to change so much. For me, transition, we have seen it already, that the emphasis now is on the transition. Before, we were thinking about having something which is already sustainable. But now the discussion is to become sustainable, to finance the transition, to try to see the disclosure about transition plans. So we see a lot that emphasis is on transition. I think that this will remain, the emphasis on transition, which is very important because transition has a lot of cost. So transition is important to see how we will get to how the financing will take place and how the companies will manage the transition. And I want to say something because there are a lot of quotas regarding ESG and whether you're speaking about perfectionism or not. ESG is about transitioning. It's about getting to where we want to go. This is my view. And it's a one-way road. We will not go back. I think this will be, I don't know how, whether there are going to be any delays in the process, maybe, because of all this that may have happened. But I think that is a one-way road. We are going to go there. We are going to proceed to a low-carbon, let's say, economy, to a greener economy. I don't think that this will change.
Okay, thank you very much. And the last question, I think Ms. Lazarakou has elaborated on that, so I would like to make this common question to both of you. Can I have your sentiment, your view with regard to the possibility that the ESG agenda will change as a result of the recent European elections? Ms. Moraru.
Well, I don't expect to see a major change. As Vassiliki said, we are on that road, so I don't think there is any way back. My view is that we might maybe expect a change in pace, but definitely there is no way back. And I think...
do you expect some catalysts, perhaps, towards this direction?
Catalyst in which respect?
Regarding the velocity of the green transition.
The speed?
Yes, the speed.
Well, I hope not. I hope the speed will continue, but there might be some challenges, and these are since relation maybe with the technology. The technology keeps evolving, and is not. I mean, we're keep talking about the electrical vehicles, but there is no actually history. There is no testing, so there might be some backlogs because of the changes of technology. But I think, I mean, the shift is towards the right direction, towards transition. And what we see, I mean, there is a change. We see change in the companies, the way they look at it. Investors, so we don't have to forget about the investors that are financing this. That they have more and more requirements on the green. So I'm overall positive. So I don't expect big changes, but we might have some bottlenecks on the way.
Okay. Ms. Papakirillou, your opinion regarding the political factor?
I think I agree with both previous speakers, and in particular your comment about this being a one-way street. So I think this is very important. I mean, we are clearly in one direction. I think the only thing that may change a bit is the pace. And there, I think, coming from the SME perspective, I think it's very important that we need to balance these targets in terms of the green transition with the competitiveness, especially for SMEs. So this is very important to ensure that we talk about the green transition, but we need to ensure that Europe is very competitive, and in particular its companies, and I would even emphasize even more SMEs. So we need to find the right balance there. Technology certainly, as you said, will help us a lot, but we need to make sure that we don't lose on the competitiveness side.
May I say something about technology? Because that was also the topic of the previous panel, and I was curious to it was very interesting what we just heard earlier. And I think that technology helps with respect to the ESG compliance and all this, because, for example, as far as the supervisors are concerned, we are now building new technology. We have actual artificial intelligence in what we are building right now, in the applications that we are building, trying to see how we can find out more easily, let's say, cases of greenwashing. There is already something that is being built by ESMA, and we are part of it. in order to make sure that we understand and we find out where we see indications of greenwashing. So artificial intelligence and as well as technology, I think, is a parameter that would help with all this progress for ESG.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I think we have optimized the available time. So I think that we can close the panel. Thank you very much again.
Thank you.